Why is it when you troubleshoot a car and you find that there's a broken wire in the harness and you chase it down and you get it patched back together and fixed, and you've had to take the whole harness apart and retape it all back up and put it all back together? Not to mention you had to find all the wiring diagrams and look everything up and test it at the PCM to make sure it's getting a signal, then test it at the relay and see that it's not getting a signal. Check there's no continuity in the wire, so now you got to go troubleshoot the wire and find it in the harness and find where it's broke and repair it. How come every single time somebody has a problem and they're like, what was it? I've had people ask me, like, how much is it going to be? I'm like, it's going to be $225 for labor. Oh, okay. And they like start counting out the money. And then they're like, well, what was it? I'm like, it was a broken wire. And it's like the money like goes from here to like just a broken wire. You're charging me how much for a broken wire? So that's all it was? A broken wire. I don't know why people don't understand how much labor there is involved in finding a broken wire and fixing it. But, like everybody says that. Everybody's like, oh, it was just a broken wire? Like, oh, well, that seems like that would be simple. Like, yeah, if you know exactly which wire it is and where it's broke, it would be simple. But since you don't, you have to go find it. And out of this big bundle of like 100 wires, you got to find the dark green with the white trace that is the dark green with the white trace that you're looking for, because there's 3 of them in there, just oh yeah. And then GM, sometimes they give you the pinouts for the PCM and sometimes they don't. I don't know why, but sometimes you're just kind of left to your own to figure it out. Yeah. I fixed one today. It's actually for my mom, and she paid me, and she said, well, what was it? And I said, it was a broken wire. And she's like, oh, that was it? That's all? A broken wire? Like, it's like, why does everybody say that's all? Oh man, it's just, you gotta have the basics down for that kind of stuff, and like hers today, it's at '09 Buick LaCrosse, and AC just stopped working, and I look, and the snowflake little button for the AC is coming on and staying on. It's not blinking, which usually if it's low on refrigerant or something else, it'll blink. It'll see that there's no pressure in the system. It'll blink and then go out. So I'm like, So I start troubleshooting it. I go to the AC compressor clutch relay because the AC compressor is not running. I ground it out. It runs. It blows cold air. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have any control to the relay. So I go look up the wiring diagram. I'm like, all right, that relay goes straight back to the PCM. So I, figure out which one is pin 33 on connector X1 on the PCM, tear the air cleaner out, get down to the PCM, find the wire, and do a wire piercing probe and see if it's pulling the ground right there. And sure enough, it's pulling it to ground when the compressor is commanded on. So then there's a problem between there and the fuse box. So, what I do is just go to the middle of it, test, and then it's in this half or this half, and then you go to the middle of that half and test. That's the quickest way to find it. But you got to tear open the wiring harness at all these points, And this one didn't have any damage to the harness. It just had a break. It pulled it apart, and there's no connection inside. It just, so it was just spliced back together and solder and heat shrink and go. But, that took 3 hours. And it's like, I don't know, it's like almost like people don't want to pay money for troubleshooting. Like they still think that fixing cars is about turning wrenches. And sometimes it is about turning wrenches. Like it needs a wheel hub, it needs an axle, it needs brakes. But so much of figuring out cars these days is about what's going on electrically. This is like my truck, the wiper motor was causing the ignition problems. You got to be able to troubleshoot that stuff, and that's a skill that a lot of people really haven't mastered, even the basics of it. And I charge for my time, and I've kind of gotten away from doing the mobile diagnostics. I know like Keith and them are really good at doing that, and Ivan, but I just find it's a lot easier if they just bring it here, and I can take my time and sit down and go through it, go look at the computer, go think about it, print out a diagram. It's real annoying when I have to go troubleshoot something. I had a Ford truck the other day, and the guy wants me to come by after work and try to figure out why it won't start, and I'm trying to troubleshoot it. I got no comm with the PCM, but I have a theft light and a check engine light, but no crank, no start, no nothing. And I'm like, well, I need to pull the PCM and check powers and grounds. At that point, I'm in a really bad neighborhood, really, really bad neighborhood. I'm like having to watch my tools, make sure they're not getting stolen out of my vehicle. And, when you've got, thousands of dollars invested in tools and equipment, you want to watch that. And then the guy keeps coming out like, oh, how's it going? Did you figure it out yet? What's it looking like? Like, it's looking like it's broke, and I'm going to troubleshoot it. And so finally, after like the 5th time of him asking, it's getting later and later. I'm thinking he wants to go home because he's staying late. I'm just like, I think it's got a bad computer, but I'm not sure. You have to send it to the dealer. And I got out of there, and it did. They sent it somewhere, and they discovered the PCM power relay was bad. But if they just would have brought it over here, if I would have had them tow it over, take my time, look through it, away from the customer, away from the garage, I can get it done. I would have found that and fixed it. But so I think, I guess what I'm saying is I think I'm still going to work on some cars, but they're going to be select cars that I want to work on that can be brought to me. I'm not doing too much of the mobile on-site diagnostic and repair anymore. It's just too crazy when you're out there in the field and you're trying to get your equipment set up and look at wiring diagrams, and it's getting dark and you're in bad neighborhoods. It's best just to bring it here and let me take my time and look at it if I'm going to do it. But anyway, that's all I got, folks. I'll talk to y'all later. It's Tom, the Frugal Prepper.